Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll hear from Variety's Elsa Kaslasi, who unpacks the big move that France has made to significantly expand the country's national production tax incentive program and why that matters to the U.S. And Jazz Tanke brings us a report on Variety's Artisans Awards that were handed out this past weekend at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Paramount Skydance is still trying to entice Warner Bros. Discovery shareholders to take another look at its offer for the company. Paramount has pledged to give a 25-cent per share bonus for every quarter that the deal has not closed after December 31st, 2026. Paramount calls it a ticking fee. It'll be interesting to see what Warner Bros. Discovery shareholders call it. Chappell Roan has exited Wasserman Music amid the Epstein Files fallout. Company leader Casey Wasserman has apologized for his past interactions with Ghislaine Maxwell and emphasized that he knew of no wrongdoing at the time, but when you're losing a star of Chappell Roan's stature, the fallout is significant. Director Greg Araki's I Want Your Sex was the talk of Sundance. The comedy has found a distributor in Magnolia Pictures. Dancing with the Stars is hosting its first ever fan convention, Dancing with the Stars Con. It will take place in Palm Springs, California from July 1st to August 2nd at the Acrisure Arena. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Elsa Kaslasi, Variety's fabulous international editor based in Paris, gives us a rundown of the big move that France made to expand its production tax credit program. With a lot of lobbying, French industry officials got over a big hurdle that is being heavily debated in the U.S. as well. Elsa Kaslasi, thank you for joining me. On Sunday, while all of America was fixated on the Super Bowl, I noticed that you put up a very interesting story about France and expanding their production tax incentive program. Elsa, tell me basically what has gone on, what has happened to make you file that story on Sunday.
So yes, this week was something very, very important for the French industry was the fact that finally the tax incentive has been expanded to allow for international productions to make eligible the salaries of actors, so non-European actors, meaning American actors, basically. And that means that Americans' actor salaries now will be included in the tax rebate, will be eligible for the 30% rebate. So that's a very big win for a lot of people in France, like executive producers, of course, but not just that. It's a huge boost for the French economy and the French industry, and it also helps train crews. So it's a big win.
It's been fascinating to watch France very consciously and explicitly say, we are investing in our content business. Content is one of the engines of the future for France. This story also got my attention because the exact change that was so significant, making above the line costs eligible to be part of the incentive, is a huge push in the US right now, where there are efforts to get a federal tax incentive. With our politics right now, I don't think anybody's holding their breath. I'm sure in France the politics are the similar in the US. From the layperson looks at this and says, wait a minute, we're going to hand money to Tom Cruise? How did France deal with the politics of that?
France is coming from, we have like a socialistic background. So, of course, I think the idea that we were going to have a tax incentive that would basically help pay for Tom Cruise's salary was something that a lot of lawmakers were against. And especially right now, France is going through a bit of a financial crisis. The country has a lot of debt. So I think that idea to make some rebate on actor salaries was really something that no one wanted. But in fact, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, has been very active in building a lot of facilities in France, a lot of studio facilities, in crews, etc. And he figured if we're not going to have the Hollywood shoots coming to France, and those facilities that we're spending millions in building, they're going to be empty. So I think that at the highest level of the government, there was Macron who was really in favor of that change. Some people in the industry, they really orchestrated this big lobbying push and it worked. But I think that it was really not obvious. Honestly, when I saw the news, I could not believe it. I called the president of the CNC. I'm like, am I reading? I mean, is it a fake news? Like, what is that? Seriously, in the context that we're going through right now, it's insane that it went through.
Because of you and your coverage, we've seen bit by bit, no less than Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos and the new Paramount chief David Ellison came over to France to actively lobby for this, saying this will make it much easier for us to bring our projects to France.
Ted Sarandos and David Ellison played a very big role in convincing Emmanuel Macron and convincing even lawmakers. What happened is that Ted Sarandos was in France last May for an event that's called Choose France, and it's an investment-focused summit. And he explained that it was really important for the French tax rebate to include actor salaries, and there was this big thing about Emily in Paris going to Rome, and Macron being desperate about bringing Emily back to France. So I think that Macron was very receptive to Ted Sarandos' argument, even though there was never a question really that Emily was going to return to Paris. But I think that Macron was really receptive. And also David Ellison was in Paris last month to rally support for his bid for Warner Bros. Discovery. And he also talked to Macron about this issue of above-the-line cost. So I think that it was like when you say the stars were aligned, that's exactly what happened.
As you point out in your story, this is also a very big ripple effect from Netflix coming in and pouring money into French language and commissioned projects out of France. And the government is smart enough to say, if we put some structure around this, we could build this into something that far outlives a moment in time.
But there is another problem now, is French filmmakers making movies with American stars. And when they make movies in France, in English language, with American stars, then it becomes more complicated. And they don't get all the subsidies that they would get if they were making the movie in French. I think the next step will be for France to say, hey, if you're making a movie directed by a French filmmaker, but it's not in French, then we'll still give you the money. It's going to be the next step.
You got to find a Jodie Foster who can pull off flawless French in a movie like A Private Life, which is so good and she's getting so much attention for. Clearly that exact issue, we're paying the actors' salaries, is going to be an issue here as they try to expand it. But I think it's one of those things, even in being in France, I think it's one of those things where this just adds to the momentum for this general concept.
Yes.
Elsa, you've mentioned Gaëtan Bruel. I probably didn't pronounce that right. He's the National Film Board president. This is clearly a big win that I'm sure all of France's distribution community is applauding today. Tell me about Gaëtan.
I think only Gaëtan Bruel could have achieved that. He's the new president of the CNC and is the youngest one. He's like 30-something. And he lived in the US for a very long time. He was the head of the French Institute, and he developed a lot of cultural programs for French creatives who wanted to make movies in the US. And he's also worked very actively in Los Angeles to attract international shoots. And last fall, he was at the American French Film Festival in Los Angeles. You know, it used to be called COCOA. And he was there and he held a lot of meetings with studio bosses and producers. And what he got from those meetings was that basically France was completely sidelined. And like a lot of productions were not even considering coming to France because they felt like it was too expensive. And they would go to London, to Budapest, to Prague. So, you know, he went to the Ministry of Finance and gave a big report on all those meetings and said, hey guys, like we really need to do something. If we don't, then we're completely going to lose the momentum. And so I think that because he has all these connections in the US, having lived there for a long time, I think it gives us a lot of advantages.
Is this a done deal or does it need any more layer of approval?
So it needs one more layer of approval, which is the European Commission. The European Commission needs to give its final green light, but everyone expects it to go very smoothly. So the biggest thing was to go through the parliament, and that's been done. So everyone is very confident. And it's expected to kick off in several weeks. Unfortunately, White Lotus, the fourth season, is going to shoot in Saint-Tropez very soon, but apparently it's going to miss those changes. So the actor salaries may not be. And by the way, speaking of hotels, the hotels are included above the line, but it's capped at 270 euros for Paris and 200 euros outside of Paris. And when you know that the Château de la Messardière, where White Lotus season 4 is going to shoot, I think the cheapest suite, is like 6,000 euros.
Well, Elsa, as always, thank you for covering all of these things. I know you're off to the Berlinale soon, so have a great time. I know you will work round the clock, but I hope you see some good movies and get a good meal or two in between.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia.
And now we turn to Jazz Tanke, Variety's senior artisans editor, who gives us a full report on a magical night with artisans in balmy Santa Barbara, which is one of my favorite spots in the whole wide world. Jazz Tanke, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Well, you're back in LA County after spending the weekend in beautiful Santa Barbara, taking part in the Santa Barbara Film Festival. Variety and the Film Festival have handed out Artisans Awards, recognizing just the cream of the crop in below the line craft, technical work, the magic of filmmaking. As anybody who knows anything about filmmaking knows, this is the heart and soul. Jazz, nobody's tapped into this community like you. Tell us about the Saturday night event up in Santa Barbara. It sounds like a magical night.
It really is. What's been so great is just seeing how the growth for this event from when I first hosted it in 2020 right through to 2026. We went from the Liberia Theater, now we're at the Arlington Theater. It was so hard this year to pick our artisan honorees because the films were so great this year, but we had a packed house thanks to the incredible panel. We had the legendary Jack Fisk, production designer, never won an Oscar, recognized for Marty Supreme. We had EJ from K-pop Demon Hunters, and the crowd went wild for her. And we had representation from Sinners, all the films in contention in this Oscar race.
That's awesome, and probably a nice opportunity to get out of LA for people that haven't had a weekend in weeks and won't have one for at least another 4 or 5 weeks at this point. What interesting things came out of those larger conversations?
So we had Andy Jurgensen, who is from One Battle After Another. He's the editor of the movie. And these are people who I speak with all season. And I actually asked him, I said, like, Andy, what was the hardest scene for you to edit? And he said, actually, obviously, aside from the incredible car chase, he said it's the DNA test sequence. It was much longer when they first got it. And they had to trim it down so that they could really just get to like the moments between Sean Penn in that sequence in Chase Infinity and really drive that tension. I was like, I've been speaking to you all the time. How come I just discovered this? And it's the same with EJ when she was talking about playing Rumi in K-pop. Well, she's the singing voice of Rumi, but also connecting to the character. And she told me how she related to like just how much this character is a perfectionist and hardworking to the fault, and that's like a demon that she had to overcome. And then at the end of the panel conversation, I think my question to everybody in the panel was like, what is a movie that inspired you, or a song or a book? And she was like, Leo and Stitch. And then she did this incredible Stitch impression that the whole internet has gone wild for. It's 2 hours and the audience laps it up.
And tell us about the audience. Is it truly this is a festival that reaches Santa Barbarans, or do you have a lot of people coming in from the outside?
We have a lot of people coming in from LA, but it really, the large majority of that is students from UCSB, the local voters, the local academy voters who live up in Santa Barbara and in the adjacent areas, and just film lovers in general.
What did you take away in terms of the mood, how people at the top of their game in the below the line community. There's a lot going on in entertainment, particularly in Southern California, with all of the challenges, all of the drama. There's consolidation that is happening that is surely going to affect the job market. And then there's also always the specter of AI. And I have no doubt that these were things that come up. And these are creative artisans at the top of their game. How are they feeling about the future of the business?
Touch specifically on the AI of it all. So many of the artisans, especially in the panel conversation, say that their crafts will not be replaced by AI. AI cannot do your job. If you are looking to get into the field, get a manual, go to libraries, read the books, study it, learn it, and craft, and build everything by hand. I think that was the key takeaway. Eric Sainton, who was the VFX supervisor who we honored for Avatar, Fire and Ash, got a huge round of applause when he said that James Cameron's and the entire team, this film was made without the use of AI. The same with the Frankenstein artisans. We all know Guillermo del Toro. Everything in that movie was handmade, handcrafted. Again, huge round of applause. It was very subtle, but the message was very clear. Their jobs can never be replaced by AI.
You cannot stop the march of technology always toward faster, less expensive. That's economics 101 in terms of what happens in a maturing market. But there's economics 101, and then there's also human beings 101. The benefit of you just being so tapped into this community really gives us a sense of where people are thinking. Jazz, thank you for working tirelessly up and down California and many other places. So appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Once again, the Berlin Film Festival starts on Thursday. Variety will be all over it with digital dailies and print dailies, so please keep your eyes peeled to Variety.com and on our social platforms. The hills are alive with the sound of music. The Library of Congress has teamed with the Rodgers and Hammerstein Estate to present a touring exhibition on the original musical, which packed such a wallop and has delivered so many indelible pop standards into our musical lexicon. It starts today in Chattanooga, Tennessee, home of the Chattanooga Choo Choo, and runs through early August in Denver. It stops at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood in May. Before we go, congrats to all of this year's Oscar nominees. Today is the day for the annual Oscar Nominees Luncheon, where they take the class photo. Everybody's still potentially a winner. The big night comes on March 15th. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Elsa Kaslasi and Jaz Tanke. Sticks, Nicks, Hick Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.